So I've been asking directors this question all the time. How long was your first cut versus the final release?
Well, I think calling it a cut is probably being generous. The first assembly was about 2.5 hours.
Oh, so not that much longer.
Not terrible. I
Yeah.
mean, in the zone of, this is not going to be wildly crazy. But we did bump into some furniture on the film because it was such an odd film, and there was really no prototype for it, really. The closest movie that Damon and I could think of that we were sort of inspired by was Close Encounters, in that the lead character is sort of implanted with a vision that he then pursues. But other than that aspect, the Close Encounters is not really like this film, and so we were kind of making our best guess at a lot of things, and most of them worked out and some of them didn't, and we had to kind of reformulate the movie a little bit.
Did you do any friends and family screenings or test screenings?
We did probably a little bit too early, because the film was it was kind of a glorified assembly more than it was a real cut at that point. But still it spurred you forward, when the audience is interested but they don't totally understand what's happening. It makes you go, okay, I thought this was clear, this is not, I'm going to change this, da-da-da-da-da. I think screenings are very valuable. I don't necessarily think cards are that valuable, but I think being in the room with people when they see a film is valuable, because you can sense when they're connecting and when they're disconnecting.
With the assembly you mentioned is 2.5, what is the final running time?
It's just a little bit over 2. It's like 2:04 or something like that. And then end credits push it to maybe 2:10.
Was there a scene or two that came really close to being in the film that was cut out at the last second?
Not at the last second. There were trims at the last second, but there weren't any scenes at the last second. There was a significant piece of animation that we've released online that they saw, that was shown to young Frank in the ride, and that was really interesting in and of itself. But we couldn't get beyond the fact that we were watching our character watching something. And as interesting as I think the piece is, and it's good in setting up what Plus Ultra is and all of that, there was no way to do it without stopping the movie. And you don't want to ever be in a position where you are watching somebody watch something for minutes.
Sure.
And the animation piece that we've released online was supposed to be the template for a ride that happened, and some of it was a projection and some of it were things that were standing up, but it was supposed to be kind of a dark ride. So it was sort of, here's what the narrative of it is, here's what the style of it is, but let's present it as a ride. So ILM had only taken the first steps towards making it a ride when we pulled the plug on it and said, look, it's cool in and of itself, but it stops the movie cold.
I completely understand. With the eventual Blu-ray release,
yes.
Will you have deleted scenes?
Oh yeah, yes. And we have quite a few deleted scenes, and some of them were, we changed the context of them. The jetpack flight that young Frank takes on the farm. Can I say all this stuff before? You can't really say it. Let's see, how would I say it? There's a scene on the farm with young Frank that is much longer, and right now it's seen only in a couple of flashbacks.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, yes.
Yeah, and the flashbacks were a much better way to handle it because it kept the story propelling forward. But as standalone sequences, they're pretty good.
So the Blu-ray will have finished scenes with effects and everything?
Yeah, well...
Or animatics?
Close. Some of it is finished and some of it is close to finished, but it's polished enough that you can get a good feeling for it.
I'm always curious about Easter eggs, and this seems like a movie that could have them. Are there a lot of Easter eggs or things that fans can look out for? Or the Easter eggs in Disneyland right now?
Oh, God, I don't know. There are definitely things that you can find in the movie. I wouldn't classify them as Easter eggs necessarily, but there will be a couple. The disc should be a good disc. Yeah, it'll have a lot of stuff on it.
I'm always very curious. I normally don't ask a casting question. However, landing George Clooney for a movie is a really big deal. Especially, I mean, he is selective with his roles. How early on did you guys meet with him to get him in the movie? Was it a challenge? Could you just talk a little bit about landing him?
Yeah, well, like I said, Damon and I were pretty deep into the writing. We kept referring to young Frank as a George Clooney guy, George Clooney kind of guy. And then we had this period where we kind of looked at each other and went, duh, should we try offering it to George? And we were basically convinced he doesn't do these kind of movies, we're not going to get him. But then we thought the topic is positive thinking. Why not? Why don't we try? Let's see, if he'll bite. So he was very nice. He met us in the driveway of his place in LA. And he basically said in the nicest possible way, I don't really do these kind of movies. I have the movies that I'm interested in doing. And I've done a couple of big tentpole-y things. And the experience wasn't necessarily great. And I have other things, but I'll be happy to hear you guys out. And we managed to get him interested in the film, and I think it was the unusual aspects of the film that is what caught him. It wasn't just another loud, bombastic thing. And so we got him fairly early. We got Hugh first, and Hugh again was our first choice for David Nix. And we got George shortly after that. And we had to, obviously he was committed to a bunch of things, but if we could delay ourselves 6 months, we could get him. And we looked at each other and went, it's no brainer, let's delay, because
sure.
He's the perfect guy for this part. So he had agreed to be in the film with our little 6-month push. And it was shortly after that, we were casting the film, that the Star Wars thing came up. So that was the, I was already pretty deep into this story, and there was no way to do Star Wars without, this story basically being shoved away and possibly just, losing its momentum. And I thought, this is too cool. I'm interested in this story, I'm
going to tell you a secret. They're making more Star Wars movies.
Yeah. No, I know. And I'll probably go see every single one of them.
Well, I have to ask, because, Josh Trank is now not on the Anthology movie. There's a lot of talk about who might do it. Is it something that you might do?
Well, Kathy and I have discussed the possibility of she's basically saying this is a very large sandbox, and other people can play in it. I was particularly attracted to the idea of picking up and JJ got very excited about the notion of shaping the next trilogy.
Sure.
And that idea was interesting to me too. But I'm writing a sequel to Incredibles, and I can't think too much farther beyond that. I have other things I want to do as well.
Totally. I have to ask you.
Yeah, in fact, just avoid all this Star Wars stuff. Everybody's totally feeding on that too much anyway.
I definitely, listen, you've heard this from me before, and I'm sure you hear it every day from a million people, how much I love The Incredibles, and you have said, I'm writing it. Can you be more specific about where you are in the writing process? Do you have a story? Do you have a treatment? Do you have pages that have been written?
Oh, yeah. I have pages, a bunch of pages. I had a lot of ideas for the original Incredibles that I didn't get a chance to use, ideas that I like. I have things that I wanted to pursue a little bit, and there wasn't enough time in Incredibles. There are new ideas I have, and I think I have enough of those together to make an interesting movie. So, I'm just focusing on getting Tomorrowland out into the world.
Totally.
And playing with the Incredible sandbox again.
Do you think that's definitely the next project?
Yeah, it feels like it to me, yeah.
I've heard a wild rumor, and it could be off base, but I have to throw it out there, that Iron Giant could be getting re-released in theaters later this year.
I would call it a smaller release. They're an idea, but there seems to be something to that.
Yeah, no, sir, I have sources in the industry, and I'm hearing. It was something I heard, and I was just. For me, I thought last year with it being an anniversary would have been...
Yeah, I know. Listen, Warner Brothers and I have danced on and off for the last decade, and there was going to be a 5-year thing. There was talk about it being in 3D at one point. Then there was talk about reformatting it for IMAX or, whatever. Discussions keep happening, but I think that something will happen fairly soon. They know that people have a fondness for it. They don't know exactly how to deal with that beyond maybe a Blu-ray or something like that. And I keep saying, you did it for Wizard of Oz and you did it for Blade Runner. I think you actually can do it. And I think they're coming around to that kind of idea and trying to figure out what's the best way to support something like that. So
basically, if I can infer from what you're saying, the Blu-ray is coming out later this year, and maybe before the Blu-ray hits, a small release.
I wouldn't say later this year because people will hold you to it.
Oh, okay.
These things take a little more time to. There are a few more things. They will happen in good time. Just say that. Things are looking up for Iron Giant.
Sure. I mean, I have a sister with kids, and I know I want them to go see it in a movie theater. So,
right.
So you think that this is... Because I've heard it is happening. But, right. I mean, you obviously know more than me.
Well, going back into the movie theater can mean a lot of things. It can mean a studio re-release. It can mean a smaller re-release like Wizard of Oz 3D. It can mean as small of a release as a Fathom event, where they show it one night only. So that whole arena is changing and becoming a much more flexible arena. So when it becomes that flexible, it becomes less scary to a studio because they're not hemmed into, one super expensive, risky thing. They can try it a number of different ways. I think the main thing Warner Brothers has to hear is that there's an audience for it. When people went back and saw Lion King because it was in 3D, did they put it in 3D?
They did the 3D re-release.
Yeah, well, I think the 3D was just a thing to throw them the bone. I think actually a lot of people just wanted to see it in a theater again and be around other people while they saw it. And, that's part of the attraction of movies is not just a big screen, but it's being with strangers and sharing a dream at the same moment. So anything that kind of bolsters the confidence in the theatrical experience, I think, is good. And I would love to see Iron Giant get back into the theaters, even only for a week.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's maybe what happens. But maybe that's just me. I'm a little optimistic.
Don't get me into trouble, though.
I will get you in trouble because I want it to happen. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the movie.